step into the shadowy sands of history, where a young pharaoh's tomb lay untouched for thousands of years, hiding treasures beyond imagination, and a curse that has haunted the world ever since. Is it a tale of ancient vengeance, bad luck, or pure invention? Join us as we delve into the discovery, the legends, and the truth behind King Tut's mysterious curse.
All right, so this deep dive takes us into one of history's juiciest mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
King Tut's curse.
It's a good one.
It is a good one.
Yeah.
And you've sent over a stack of articles and research, even first-hand accounts.
Oh, wow.
We're talking everything from infected mosquito bites to statistical analyses.
Sounds like quite the mix.
It is quite the mix.
Yeah.
So think of us as your mythbusters for this deep dive.
Okay.
We're going to separate fact from fiction
All right.
and see if there's any truth to this legendary curse.
A healthy dose of skepticism is always a good starting point, I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But before we go full skeptic,
Right.
let's rewind all the way back to 1922.
Okay.
Okay,
Way back.
picture the Valley of the Kings in Egypt.
Okay.
You've got this archaeologist, Howard Carter.
Right.
He's obsessed with finding King Tut's tomb.
Mm-hmm.
Years of searching, he finally strikes gold. Literally,
KV 62.
the resting place of the boy king.
The boy King Tutankhamun.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And it was packed with treasures, untouched for over 3,000 years.
It's incredible to imagine, isn't it?
It's hard to even imagine that moment, right? This incredible discovery.
Yeah.
The world's holding its breath.
Right.
Carter utters those now famous words.
Let's hear them.
Yes, wonderful things.
Wonderful things indeed.
Wonderful things. It was a monumental find.
It was.
And really kicked off, I think, what we now call like Egyptomania.
Absolutely. It captured the world's imagination.
Totally. And speaking of crazes,
Hmm.
that's where things took a bit of a spooky turn.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, enter the curse narrative. So within months,
Right.
Lord Carnarvon, Carter's financial backer,
Right.
dies from an infected mosquito bite,
Oh, no.
and suddenly
Yeah.
newspapers are buzzing about the curse of the pharaoh.
Makes sense.
Right. And then it's like something straight out of a horror movie.
Okay.
Other members of Carter's team start dying
Oh, wow.
under mysterious circumstances.
Mysterious circumstances, you say?
Mysterious circumstances.
Right.
Oh, hold on. There's even a story about Carter's pet canary
The pet canary.
getting gobbled up by a cobra.
Oh, come on. That's too much.
What's more dramatic than that?
I mean, talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Exactly. It
Yeah.
was a media frenzy,
Right.
feeding into the public's fascination with the supernatural and the
Mhm.
mystique of ancient Egypt.
Makes sense.
And remember, this is the Roaring '20s,
Oh, yeah.
this time obsessed with the exotic and the occult.
It's the perfect backdrop, isn't it? It's the perfect
That
backdrop.
was a good curse story.
So we've got these eerie events,
Mhm.
a public hungry for a good story.
Yep.
And newspapers, well, happy to oblige.
Oh,
It's like the perfect recipe for a long-lasting legend.
It is, isn't it?
But
Oh.
if we dig into those original reports,
Okay.
the ones you send over,
Yeah.
some of the facts start to, well, unravel.
Let's unravel them.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Like that whole widespread death thing.
It turns out a lot of them were just sensationalized stories.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And a lot of these supposed victims
Mm-hmm.
weren't even directly involved in the excavation.
Interesting.
And remember, Lord Carnarvon,
The first victim,
the
Rev.
first to fall prey to the supposed curse,
Yeah?
well, he was already in frail health.
Oh,
And a mosquito bite in Egypt back then wasn't exactly unusual.
good point.
Hardly proof of ancient vengeance, is it?
I don't think so, no.
More like bad luck and maybe a bit of a...
A bit of what?
Let's just say the newspapers weren't exactly known for their fact-checking back then.
Right. Some creative license, perhaps.
A little creative license.
Oh.
And then there's the tale of that inscribed clay tablet,
Oh, yeah. I've heard about this.
warning of death's wings for those who disturb the tomb.
Spooky stuff.
Super spooky.
Yeah.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
There is a catch.
Yeah.
What is it?
That tablet
Hmm?
never actually documented.
Really?
No record of it in Carter's meticulous notes. Not a trace in any museum collection.
So it's like it never even existed.
It's likely a complete fabrication.
Wow, that's a big one
Yeah.
to just make up.
So we can probably put that one down to either overactive imaginations
Right.
or a clever way to keep curious locals away from the site.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both.
Maybe a little bit of both.
Okay, so the anecdotes are a bit shaky.
Yeah.
What else do we have?
All right. So what about something a little more scientific sounding,
Okay.
like the tomb toxins theory?
Tomb toxin.
It sounds pretty plausible.
Yeah, it does, actually.
Thousands of years sealed up in a tomb.
Mm-hmm.
There's got to be something nasty lurking in there.
You would think so, right?
You would think so.
Yeah.
So in the 1980s, Dr. Caroline Stinger Phillip puts forward this theory.
Okay.
She argued that ancient molds and bacteria
Mm-hmm.
sealed in these tombs for centuries
Right.
could be deadly.
Interesting.
We're talking Aspergillus niger and Aspergillus flavus,
Mm,
the moldy culprits found on mummies.
right.
Plus, those not-so-friendly bacteria,
Okay.
like Pseudomonas and Staphylococcus,
Yeah.
and don't forget the embalming chemicals.
Oh, right, of course.
Ammonia, formaldehyde, hydrogen sulfide.
It's a potent mix.
Sounds like a recipe for trouble.
It really does, yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay, tell me.
If these tomb toxins were really that potent,
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't the deaths have been more immediate?
That's a good point.
Lord Carnarvon, for instance, died months after entering the tomb.
You would expect something a little quicker, wouldn't you?
Right. Like something a little more dramatic.
Yeah, if it was really that deadly.
And from what I've read, even modern-day Egyptologists don't seem too worried about these so-called tomb toxins.
Really? They're not too concerned about it these days.
No, they're not.
Angel.
Even National Geographic did their own investigation
Okay.
and found that most experts today aren't losing sleep over it.
So maybe it's not as dangerous as it sounds.
In fact, one epidemiologist, F. DeWolf Miller, said that given the general state of hygiene back then,
Right.
especially in Egypt,
Yeah.
Lord Carnarvon might have been safer inside the tomb.
Oh, how ironic.
Yeah.
So the sealed tomb might have actually been a healthier environment.
Maybe those ancient Egyptians were on to something with all that airtight sealing.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Who knew tomb raiding could be so healthy?
Right. So it seems like the curse narrative is more fiction than fact,
Yeah.
at least when it comes to the sensational stories and the tomb toxins. But what about cold, hard data?
Right.
Is there any evidence of a curse in the actual lifespans of those involved?
That's where Dr. Mark Nelson and his statistical deep dive come in.
Let's hear about it.
Okay, so we've tackled the spooky stories and the whole tomb toxins thing.
Right.
But what about the actual data?
Yeah, let's get into the numbers.
Is there any statistical evidence to support this curse?
Well, that's where Dr. Mark Nelson's 2002 study comes in,
Okay.
published in the British Medical Journal, no less.
Oh, wow. So this is the real deal.
Yeah, he took a very different approach.
Okay.
Instead of relying on anecdotes and speculation, he went straight for the data.
So he looked at the lifespans of those involved in the excavation.
Exactly.
Interesting.
He conducted what's called a retrospective cohort study.
Retrospective cohort study.
It sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty straightforward.
Okay.
He identified 44 Westerners who were present during the excavation,
Right.
and he split them into two groups,
Okay.
those exposed to the supposed curse.
So the ones who were there for the big moments?
Yeah, like opening the tomb, the sarcophagus, things like that.
Okay.
And then the second group, those who weren't present at those key events.
Got it. So he's comparing the lifespans of those who should have been cursed to those who
That's
weren't.
exactly. And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay, lay it on me.
The group exposed to the curse, they lived on average to the age of 70.
Okay.
So group that wasn't exposed, they lived to 75.
A 5-year difference.
Yeah.
That seems like it could be significant, right?
Well, it might seem that way at first glance,
Right.
but we have to take into account the average life expectancy back then.
Oh, good point. People didn't live as long back then.
Exactly. And then there's this thing called the p-value.
Oh, the p-value. Here come the statistics.
Don't worry, it's not that scary.
Okay.
Think of it like this. You flip a coin 100 times.
Right.
You'd expect to get heads about 50 times, give or take.
Sure.
But there's always a chance you get more or fewer heads just by pure chance.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The p-value helps us figure out if a result like that 5-year difference is likely due to chance.
Like a statistical fluke.
Exactly, or if there's something else going on.
Okay, so a high p-value basically means it could have just been random.
Exactly, like flipping that coin and getting a bunch of heads in a row.
Gotcha.
And in Nelson's study, the p-value was high.
So that 5-year difference, meaningless.
Statistically speaking, yes.
No curse effect.
It seems not.
The data just doesn't support it.
No. And Nelson's conclusion was pretty clear.
What did he say?
There was no significant association between exposure to the mummy's curse and survival, and thus no evidence to support the existence of a mummy's curse.
Case closed.
I think so.
So it looks like the curse of King Tut was more a product of media hype
Right.
and our own fascination with, well, death and curses.
We do love a good mystery, don't we?
It's true. And the idea of a vengeful pharaoh punishing those who disturbed his tomb,
It's a classic.
it's a compelling story.
It is.
But as we've seen, sometimes the truth is a lot more,
Mundane?
yeah, mundane, no curses, no toxins,
Just bad luck.
pre-existing conditions, and the very real dangers of, well, life in the early 20th century,
Things that affect us all.
whether we've rated a tune or not.
Exactly.
I think that's a really important takeaway here.
What's that?
Just because something makes for a good story or grabs headlines
Right.
doesn't make it true.
A good reminder for all of us.
It's a reminder to always be critical
Mhm.
of what we read and hear.
Absolutely. To look beyond the sensationalism and, seek out the evidence.
To dig a little deeper.
To dig a little deeper, just like we're doing on this deep dive.
Exactly.
And, even without the curse,
Right?
the discovery of Tut's tomb remains one of the most significant archaeological finds of all time.
Absolutely.
It gave us this incredible glimpse into ancient Egypt.
It did.
Its art, its rituals, its beliefs.
A treasure trove of history
A treasure trove.
and wonder.
Yeah, so before we wrap up, anything else from the research you want to touch on?
Sure.
Any lingering mysteries or final thoughts for our listener?
One thing that really struck me from the research is how easily misinformation can spread,
Oh, for sure.
especially with a story as captivating as this one.
Yeah, the King Tut curse really shows you the power of a good story, doesn't it?
It does. Even back in the 1920s, they didn't have the internet,
No social media.
but they had those newspapers, right?
Yeah, and they took a few unconnected events, a mosquito bite, some unrelated deaths, and boom, a thrilling tale that took the world by storm.
It's like confirmation bias in action.
Exactly. People wanted to believe in the curse, so they clung to any shred of evidence they could find.
Even if it was, well, total nonsense.
Right. It's like they were seeing death's wings everywhere.
Exactly. But, like we talked about, the reality is much simpler.
No magic, just a dose of bad luck.
And those everyday dangers that we all face.
Right. It's a good reminder that we should always approach these kinds of stories with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Question what we hear, look for the evidence.
Absolutely. Don't just take things at face value.
Especially these days when information spreads like wildfire.
Oh, absolutely. It's more important than ever to be discerning, to really think critically about what we're consuming.
It's like that old saying, don't believe everything you read.
Right, except now it's more like, don't believe everything you read, see, or hear.
Exactly. But hey, even without the curse,
Yes.
Tutankhamun's tomb is still one of the most significant archaeological finds ever.
No doubt about it.
This incredible window into ancient Egypt.
Art, rituals, beliefs,
A legacy that continues to fascinate.
curse or no curse.
Well said. Well said.
So I think we've done it.
I think so too.
Debunked the curse, uncovered some truth.
And maybe learned a little something about ourselves along the way.
Always a good thing.
Thanks for sending us down this rabbit hole. It's been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
To our listeners, stay curious, stay skeptical, and keep exploring.
Until next time.